Welcome to the Fishing Daily podcast. Today I'm joined by Patrick Murphy from the Irish South and West, and Patrick is joining us from Santiago in Spain, where he is at a conference for the Northwest Waters. Welcome, Patrick.
Hi, Oliver. Hello, everybody.
Patrick, big news. It was the decision by the Court of Appeal to quash the 6-mile exclusion policy directive that was introduced by McBride back in 2019. What's the implications for it being overturned?
Well, for me anyway, our arguments stand firm. We have vessels that go in and target a fishery in the inner bays, and they have equipment and sonars, and they target that fishery and take a portion of the shoals of fish that are in there and land them and make their living. And they've been doing it for generations, and they've been doing it for decades. Two individuals that go in there that got all the attention. There's a lot of other boats that go in and access this fish, and it's an important contribution to their annual earnings. And to take it away from them, you know, as the minister said, there's other opportunities. Well, we've seen where the other opportunities are. That's decommissioning. That's leaving the industry. We don't have enough fish. So I welcome this decision. It was a just decision. And for these reasons, Oliver, we've been saying it from the start that the information that came from the MI and from BIM, from their experts, they admitted to Judge McBride that what they were giving advice on wasn't what was being delivered. So what the minister and the department were advocating for, their advice wasn't specific enough to deal with those issues. So since then, a lot of new information has come to light. The Marine Institute has finally started to do a study on these important fish stocks and their lifespan, and maybe get a grip on the proper management. We presented a paper after Judge McGrath sided with these lads the first time round in 2020, and we gave it to the department. We gave it to the whales and dolphins and the NGOs, and we said, look, we'll sit down with you. We'll create a managed fishery. We'll address any of your concerns. I think there was 5 or 6 different points on the paper, and in fairness to the 2 lads that took the case, they were the ones that sat down with me and drafted this. And at their detriment, you know, they were giving up a lot inside that paper, I felt, but they did so, showing, you know, that we're willing to create a managed fishery here, but not just for other people, but for ourselves. And I welcome the judgment. I was surprised, to be honest with you, that they overturned Judge McGrath's first initial ruling, which was that the boats were identified and easily identified as the 2 most affected. Therefore, the minister should have consulted with them, so they turned that over. But then they sided with the claim that there should have been consultation and proper consultation with countries outside of Ireland and people that would be affected by this inside that area, namely the UK fishermen. So we've always maintained that, and we've been constant in that. And just to explain, when we joined the Seafood RE group, that was one of the terms of reference that we asked to be included in the terms of reference, which was that you had to consult with other countries that were going to be affected by new entrants coming into the marine space. I feel that's only fair, and it would mean proper consultation. And it wasn't accepted. It was thrown out by the chairman, and he didn't include it in TOR. He decided that that's not the case. So now that it's a public ruling, I think that there is an imposition now for the government to take up, and they'll have to speak to other countries' fishing fleets, whether we like it or not. They have rights in our waters. We've always maintained they've too much fish, and I stand by that. But at the same time, legal is legal. They have their entitlements to come in unless they are taken away from them or changed. So they have to be consulted with. So this is huge as far as I'm concerned now in consultation terms. Otherwise, then there won't be proper consultation, and you could see challenges in the pipeline, I'd say. If fishermen are going to lose their fishing grounds and traditional fishing grounds and just be told to move off, then I think there'll be challenges to it. And here's one that definitely hasn't happened in any meaningful way to date. That's proper consultation with other countries.
That does lead to the big question. So we have a lot of Belgian boats coming into the Irish Sea to fish. We have boats from Holland and I suppose all over the coastal states of the European Union on the western seaboard. So this ruling means that if government's going to have a consultation on something regarding offshore wind farms or whatever it is, then a lot of European countries will have to be involved in that consultation.
Yeah, and proper consultation. So the Northwest Waters Advisory Council, the one that I'm attending now, was invited in to a couple of working group workshops, but only for informative purposes. There was no proper consultation or information gathered back in return. And I feel that will be challenged later on. And like, you know, if we are hell-bent on securing energy around the shoreline, then this is the wrong way to go forward. And look, the cumulative effects of these wind farms is only being realised now. We were in London the week before last, where we met the Northern Fisheries Alliance. We're part of that, the Irish South and West. And it's scary, to be honest, which is the only way that I'll describe the amount of wind farms and the projects that are in the pipeline for all over Europe. They'll be everywhere. And so fish are migratory, and they're not going to have any rest place as far as I can see. There'll be wind farms everywhere they go. And I think there'll be a massive impact on the marine environment, on the biodiversity of the different areas. And of course, that's going to lead to changes. You're going to have noise, you're going to have wind shear, you're going to have change in temperatures in the water, you're going to have change in the currents, and all this will have a knock-on effect. And how much of a knock-on effect, God only knows. This is really, really dangerous as far as I can see now, because one of the ex-BIM administrators, we'll call him, I won't name him now in fairness, because that might be right, but in his presentation to the Northwest Waters Advisory Council and to the North Sea Advisory Council, he said for Ireland to reach its projected aspirations for wind farms, you would create a 12-kilometre wide corridor from Castletownbere to Newfoundland. Now that is some distance of to travel, but not only that, isn't that some amount of water to be taken up? So bring that back and wrap it around Ireland. It's like wrapping a scarf around your neck 2 or 3 times. This is what you're talking about, like, and to me, that's just unimaginable what that could do to our, as I said, traditional fishing grounds. So on that note, we were in Cork with the Taoiseach and Eamon Ryan for the launch of the consultation on ORE, and the ORE were not happy because the government told them they can't pick the sites. No, I didn't know in the first place that they were able to pick the sites, but now it'll be the government that'll pick the sites through consultation. So they won't be able to pick where they want to go through the DMAP then and Bord Penala. You'll be able to put in your questions. But not only that, industry has come together again now, and we're going to have the proper information. And Ed Farrell from the KFO, their science officers, after putting together a very good model of activity and the waters where they're talking about and any of the planned areas, but the activity of boats and how important it is, right down to what's earned by these vessels inside these areas. Like, so to me, that's a game changer. The industry, I think, showed good faith in their open engagement with the ORE, and I think now that it's time we started talking Turkey. And what Turkey I'll be talking about, if somebody's going to lose part of their livelihood, be pushed off their traditional fishing grounds, somebody's going to have to compensate them for that. Same as any other property owner that has property rights on land. I think fishermen should be put in the same category, without question.
Going back to the Court of Appeal case and the outcome of that Court of Appeal case, if there's grounds that's been taken away from Irish fishermen, would that mean then that the fishermen from other European or other EU countries, and or I suppose other European countries that's fishing in Irish waters, are they going to be? Are they going to be included then in any compensation that has to be paid out by these energy companies?
Well, there's the question. There's the question, just like you said, anybody that's been pushed out of the traditional fishing grounds. This is a conversation. That's why the Northern Alliance has raised these issues, and they're going to keep raising just what you said there, Oliver. As I said, it doesn't matter who you are or where you are. If you're being pushed off your traditional fishing grounds, where your farm is, where you were making your livelihood, and you have to have legal authorization to go fishing. So you have a legal claim, as far as I'm concerned, where you have fished. You might be able to stick up a flag and claim it like will be the case for the ORE, you know, and you hear government, oh, it'll be shared and there'll be co-location. And sure, anybody in the fishing industry knows that's impossible. That won't happen. Nobody's going to take those risks to be throwing around these massive structures and cables and anchorage and everything all over the place. And we don't even know how stable they're going to be. I seen a picture the other day of a turbine blade floating around the water and a boat strapped to it to bring it in. So, like, you know, this is something that hasn't been thought out. But you're right, compensation is compensation. No other industry or no other property owner would be expected to give up what they have for nothing. And community funds and this lark, and I call it a lark, it's just not good enough, right? I'm not going to be competing with somebody on the land for money when it has nothing to do. We're losing our ability to earn a living. Nobody else is. You might be discommoded and see something in the horizon. It might dirty your view, but you still earn your living ashore, you know, unless somebody puts it in your back garden. That's a different story. But they're putting it in our front garden, you know. So I can't understand why people don't recognize there is a right here for fishermen and they should be protected, and their families and the coastal communities that depend on them. And we're at an extinction event as far as I'm concerned already. So that we're down to just over 100 vessels over 15 meters fishing in the offshore. And, you know, that's just crazy to contemplate that as an island nation with such rich fishing grounds, that's the size of our fleet. I can't make sense of that. So, you know, all these things and MPAs where we would like to be there, what's being protected, you know, is it something that fishing are going to interfere with? Fair enough. Prove it. And that's what I'd say, because our fishing boats trawl the same fishing grounds over and over again. And the Marine Institute have stated that 80% of the fishing is done on 20% of the ground. So, like, that 20%, if there's that much activity on it, how is that activity deemed to be damaging? And when that's the place you go for the fish, unless you don't want fishing, unless you want to create reefs or something like that, and you're going to start planting rocks or put stuff down there. But that's what you're talking about. And somebody asked me that had nothing to do with fishing. They said, oh, but the sea. I said, listen, the next time you're up in a plane, look out the window. And as you're flying out from your destination, look down into the sea, see what you see. You don't see darkness, right? What you see is little islands of darkness. That's where the reefs are, the seaweed are. They're not all over the place. Like nephrops are done inside mud, you know? So you're going to damage the mud. Like, if that's your argument, there should be no more plowing of fields. I've said this before. No more planting cereals, no more planting crops, no more roads, no more infrastructure. Sure, that all interferes with the nature and the biodiversity and everything else on land. So why should sea be treated any different?
There's major implications that the governments have not looked at, especially for the industry. Like, you know, when you're talking about offshore wind developments and marine protected areas, and then highly protected marine areas and everything goes with it. Like, boats are granted licenses to fish, you know. So then are they going to change the licenses that has been granted? Can they change the license that has been granted?
Yeah, like as we say, I believe that a boat, once it has an authorization to go fishing, once it can show that this isn't free ground. This isn't an area that isn't being used. You know, these boats are trawling these grounds. They might go there every day of the week. We know they don't, but they do go there in a certain weather conditions and everything else. This might be the only place they can go fishing. So, like, to just deny their rights for somebody else to come in, and we're told they're going to make billions and that they're, you know, way more important to the economy than the Irish fishermen, then okay, if you're going to make billions, cut us in. Simple as that. If a fisherman can't go fishing, if half his income is gone because he can't go to sea, then you have to compensate him for that and his crew. And it's not just on the fish, it's the cumulative value of that fish and what else that is. And there's where you talk about your community funds then. So the service industry that services them, the shops, the keepers, like, all the other businesses that are spin off from fishing in our coastal communities, right down to tourism,
These coastal funds that has been promised by M and Ryan, they'll run out in 20 years' time. Whereas if boats are fishing, it's an endless resource that's earning money. And it seems to be a bit of a cod when you hear the Green Party talking about, this is great for the communities. Yet and all, you have Minister Ryan in China for St. Patrick's Day. In Vietnam, one of their construction companies is building a 12,000 megawatt coal burning power station that will be completed in 2025. And yet and all, we're here today from Mr. Ryan on on a podcast thing that we got. It's great, it's fantastic out there, but there doesn't seem to be any common ground with what he's saying about China and then what he's talking about when he's bashing us here in order to try and make us change over to electricity and give up fossil fuels.
Yeah, but like I'm hoping that people will wake up to this reality. Like, if the electricity stops, what are you going to warm yourself with then? Like, what's the alternative? You won't have a fireplace inside the house. We've had this conversation before, Oliver, but you're dead right. Like, I looked up the figures from the CSO and international figures, and I was wrong. I thought it was 1.7% was Ireland's global contribution in carbon for everything now. That's planes, trains, automobiles, everything, farming, the whole lot, fishing, everything. That's all we were contributing, right? And I was told, no, your figures are wrong. It's 0.09%.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
0.09%.
0.09%. Yeah, 0.09% of 4% of the carbon that's in the atmosphere. So it's a percentage of a percentage that we're producing. And if Ireland was wiped off the face of the earth in the morning, that would not change the contribution of carbon that's in the atmosphere.
And I would challenge anybody, if Ireland was sunk to the bottom of the ocean, I can guarantee you the carbon levels will go up, and I'll explain why. We're one of the greenest countries in the world, and carbon is a plant food. Plants take in carbon, and they photosynthesize it, and they give us oxygen back, and then plants, the trees grow bigger, and they store in the carbon, So like plants, it's a circular economy, If you leave grass grow wild, they keep saying, oh, it's a carbon sink. It's not. I have a small farm and it goes dead. It goes white. That's it. It's not growing. It's not taking in it. It only takes in oxygen when it's green. Yes, it stays dead, but if you cut that grass, the carbon that's stored in that grass falls on the bottom, and the nutrients then are taken from that, creates the next set of grass, but the next set of grass that comes up takes in more carbon to grow, and the carbon builds up, and that's your carbon sequestering. And so for Ireland to be paying the price to be the good guys of the world is a nonsense when our own people are suffering. We have 800 million of a debt. We're heading for 1 trillion. And like, where do they think we're going to get the money to pay it off? Like, we've the richest fishing grounds. We've had this conversation, Oliver, where our counterparts, we call them Norway, same population, living on the ocean, not even an island, but they landed and sold 14 billion worth of fish products. 14 billion, we had 500 million. Like, can you imagine that servicing our national debt? How long will it take to pay it off? It's just ridiculous. And that's just the exports. That's 14 billion into their economy. That's not what was generated and the jobs that was created and what it got to send that fish out and the materials and everything else. You're talking about billions circulating around inside their economy from fisheries. And we're looking on then at their boats coming down and helping themselves, and other boats coming in, as you said, coming into our coastline and helping themselves. It's just madness. It makes no sense to me, and it never will. And I think it's down to political naivety, right? Maybe even ignorance at this stage now, because it's not like they're not being told, Oliver, and the evidence is there. We're providing the evidence left, right, and centre. This is what we're doing now. With the last couple of days is drafting evidence and scientific advice for those decision makers. The toughest thing to take is after doing that work and spending so much time on it and doing it right and getting a consensus from all different stakeholders, NGOs and everybody else inside the room. Then for the advice, oh, thanks very much. Tick the box. We might use it. We may not use it, or send it back again. Try again. Try again for what? To conform to what they're looking for? Crazy.
Yeah, that just seems to be that it's very difficult to get certain people to listen to the knowledge that the industry has, you know, built up over the years and the way things actually work. Is it still getting frustrating for the fishing industry representatives to be banging on doors when, you know, they really want to educate people on how things are working?
Well, here's the plug now for Patrick. I'm going to Europe because of that. Like, so we've banged on the doors. Nobody's told us we're wrong, but they're certainly not using what's right. We see from Brexit, we fought very hard to get that money and we did bang on the door, especially in the Irish South and West. And we got 1.2 billion. It was over 20% of the funds, nearly a quarter of the funds. We see our minister now this week taking 150 million out of it for climate measures. For who? We were looking for fuel subsidies last year, just a few million, and we got nothing. And genuinely, so for the minister to say he gave 12 million for tie-ups, which are how many boats now have to pay that back when they go decommissioning? Like, it's just, and there was tax paid on that, like, you know, so it's not like the state coffers didn't get helped out from this by massive amounts of fuel. Then, like, the fuel was doubled, so the money they took in from the fuel was astronomical as well. They, you know, they didn't give us anything for free, you know, crazy stuff, Oliver, that men and women are risking their lives out in the water and supporting coastal communities and families, and to be treated in such a manner, like, it's just so absolutely frustrating. To be honest with you, you'd be in the loony bin if you let it get to you. We just have to keep going and keep fighting and keep looking at different angles. And there's people there for 30 years doing this, like, you know, and things haven't got better, they've gotten worse. So, like, if they don't get better, then you will have nothing. We'll be having a conversation and it'll be reminiscing about the fishing industry Ireland once had. And the people of this country, Ireland, they'll be saying, how come we don't have fish anymore? It'll be too expensive. They won't sell it here. That's what'll happen. Like, it'll go through the roof.
What's the number of boats that's been shunted out of the industry by this decommissioning scheme? It's getting less likely that that fish will be an everyday product for the ordinary households.
Yeah, and here's the contradiction, Oliver, right? We went in and did, I'd say, nearly a year's work inside in the task force to give the best advice and look at all the data and facts. And it's an awful lot of work went into that now, and people mightn't realize how much there is. It's not just having a meeting; you have to go and study it and look and research and bring in proper evidence-based advice, right? And figures that were put out. And BIM did a great job. In fairness to them, they showed what was needed to be done in the circumstances we found ourselves in. And sure, those targets aren't going to be met at all now. Why? Because we were too tight with the purse strings. We got 1.2 billion euros between the agri sector of this country. 150 billion now is going to be taken away. Like 10% of that would have reached the targets. It would have paid people to get out of the industry. 57 wanted to get out because they had no choice but to get out. Now they've no choice but to stay in, a lot of them, because the money they were offered for their boats was done in a manner that targeted them. Like, crazy stuff. If a boat didn't fish hard or compete and land the same amount of fish as their next door neighbor, they got maybe a third or a quarter of what the other boat was to get in the add-ons. Like, that was crazy. When if you told them tomorrow, well, go out and we'll see what fish you can get, and they went out and they fished 7 days a week and just non-stop and just hit all the key stocks and targeted that, because why? They were going to get hundreds of thousands for doing it, not for landing the fish, but in compensation for leaving the industry, to give the fella behind them a chance to stay viable. Of course, fellas could have done that, but they didn't. So they didn't take into account the system of allocation of fishing opportunities in our country. They threw it out the window. And then they said, well, this is what you caught. That was like ITQs. You know, we don't have ITQs in this country. So as far as I'm concerned, they cheated the fishermen who felt they had no option but to get out. And you're going to have a scenario now that some people have no choice but to get out, and they're going to lose everything that they worked for all their lives because they bad luck or force majeure or ill health. Like I had a man that rang me and he said, I didn't meet the criteria. I was too sick, I had cancer, and I couldn't go fishing. And that man then is excluded. And that to me is a criminal. That is just not right. Like, they're on about mothers and baby homes. Jesus, there'll be another one in a few years' time about fishermen and how badly this government treats them. It's criminal what's going on.
Patrick, we're kind of getting tight in time here at the moment. Just quickly, so far we've been told 20 boats have accepted the scheme. Has any more boats accepted it since?
I think there's a few have accepted it, and I won't know how many leave, Oliver, until the closing date for handing in your licenses is gone. But there was 5 different options to solve the problem that was identified, and we needed 34 million of fish to go back into the system. The only way to do that they said, was to take out people that were catching that amount of fish. That would increase it for everybody else that's left. I couldn't see more than 20, 25 million be taken out. That's 14 million. But that 14 million was only if everybody else left. Now that certain boats have stayed in, then that means there has to be more fish there. So I reckon we're going to be short around 20 million of fish that should be put back into the system. So how are we going to balance that book? You know, are we going to jeopardize boats again now and be chasing boats? We see a lot of activity off the southwest coast there with EFCA and boats, like, you know, and we're not against being policed, right? Never said we were. But like, there has to be a measure of fairness and a level playing pitch. Like, everybody has to be treated in the same way. And if we want to go through the SOCs and see what risk assessments and who has what fish and fishing alongside each other, like the methodology that the SFPA brought in for the NIFRAPs, you know, let's look at it that way. And I'm scratching my head. I don't understand why the boats that are being targeted, and all in one area. You know, it doesn't make any sense to me. And you see fleets running from these boats as well, and that doesn't seem to be registering either. You know, it's like wherever they're going to be, or they settle, certain boats take off and move somewhere else. Why are they doing that?
Yeah, if they didn't have anything, if it didn't have anything to hide, they wouldn't be moving off the grounds. They would take it like that it's a good thing that it's there to protect the fish stocks.
We're actually going to meet representatives now of EFCA over here, a group of us from the Irish industry and representatives, like, so that's going to happen on Wednesday. And we're going to be asking these questions, like, because it's only right, fair and proper that we do, and we understand the procedures that are being invoked here and the code of practice that's being used, and making sure that there's a level playing pitch, that there's not one country being targeted over another. And we're hoping to hear those questions, and in fairness to EFCA, they have agreed for that meeting, and we'll see what comes out of it.
Well, thank you for joining us, Patrick, and we'll probably hear from you again after the meetings in Spain, because there's a lot happening out there, and it'd be great to catch up and find out what's the news. Yeah, pleasure as always, Oliver. Talk to you soon.